All right, good afternoon. Let's get started. So let's see. So we're now in week 4. So by this point, hopefully you're mostly able to get along with what we're studying, and maybe we can even pick up the pace a little bit. At this point, if you still have questions that are sort of outside of the flow of the class by a margin of, let's say, 15%, if you know what I mean, then I'm going to suggest that you see the tutors so they can help you. So definitely make time after class to see the tutors because we have to cover the material. So on this note, we have an updated tutoring schedule, and I posted it on Canvas. And also I wanted to show you, so Tung is still in the program. He hasn't graduated, and he is now a tutor. And so I just want to show you his website. He has a really cool website, so I thought I might include it as a, I don't know, a motivational point, if you will. So this is his website, and you can take a look, but just wanted to show you, very nicely organized. And he has essentially put together a portfolio of his skills and added some little, these are images he has added. He has created a 3-column layout for his page. He added an image here, another image. He listed his projects. So eventually you will get to a point where this is what you need to do. You need to have a portfolio, and you need to have a website portfolio, and also you're going to need to have something called GitHub. So this is not a class about GitHub, but you will encounter GitHub in other classes. And essentially, it's pretty much you must have these skills, or these, not skills, but these artifacts, if you will, to include. And here he included testimonials, and I'll give you one too, but he didn't ask me. But so services and his tutoring schedule. So this is really very detailed and I think really well put together. So I just wanted to show it to you. If you want, you can look at the website in more detail on your own time, but we can now look at the source and sort of, you can see here a little bit of what he has done. And some of this is going to start making sense. Here is his image, right? So he put it in his folder. You're familiar with images now. And he created a navigation here. Something like what you wanted to do for homework, except it looks like, there you go. So these are the links. So it's always good. HTML is open source. You can look at the view source and see what is there. So if you are interested in how someone did something, you should look at their website. And here's another image. See here, right. I mean, it's a lot of work to put this together. And somewhere down here, is his email. So he's using some kind of, he's not using the mail to tag. Anyway, I'm getting distracted because it's interesting, but he's using some kind of content delivery network, it looks like, to process his email. So anyway, check it out if you're interested, and definitely take advantage of the tutoring lab because all these guys and all these folks are very knowledgeable, and they will help you out. Yeah, Zach, Jamie is more networking, Anthony, Aaron, Miriam is, all former students, and Tung and Jeff. So take advantage of the opportunities. Now, regarding today, I have still received several questions from students who are still figuring out how to do things. So I thought it might be a good idea to talk a little bit about troubleshooting tips. So we can have a discussion I'm going to share some of my troubleshooting tips and also what you have discovered so far, because as you can see, most of your time will be probably troubleshooting as opposed to writing your code. So you need to know how to troubleshoot effectively. And then we're going to have a couple more examples from chapter 5 with images. So we're going to wrap up chapter 5 today. And I'm hoping we have a little bit of open lab time so I can troubleshoot with you guys. There's some, I think, still things that are not working. So I want to take a look and see what the problem may be. All right, so that's the plan, and we'll get through as much as we can. Now, in terms of troubleshooting, let's first maybe open the forum to you. So what kind of troubleshooting tips have you been using that are working for you so far? Excellent. Code validator, and I should probably put this together in a document, but you know what I'm going to do? I actually done this before. I'm going to create a discussion, and please, I would like you to tell us, but also just maybe put a note in the discussion, and then we can combine together everyone's points about troubleshooting, and then you can see what others included as well. So troubleshooting tips. Okay. So please add yours. That's a great one. So using the validator is definitely a great starting point. Refresh Canvas if necessary. Anything else? Okay. Let's actually just say that going forward, if you send me code for troubleshooting, I'm going to ask you, have you run it through the validator? So the validator should be your first line of defense before you email me to look at it, because it can automatically catch typos, for example, okay? So the validator, what else? Anything else you've been using? Maybe I should ask what kind of issues have you encountered, and then we can brainstorm together for solutions.
My problems are mostly just with like file understanding. Like for example, on the homework.
Okay, right.
I didn't save the new images I had correctly. I saved them on my computer, but I didn't save them to like Notebook.
To the server.
Yeah, so I'm like, why aren't these working? Because when I tested, it worked.
Okay.
But then when I tried to, so it's
right.
stuff like that that I don't really know.
All right. Well, this is just a matter of learning that you have to
Right.
you have to check it. So there are two schools of thought. Oh, just 1 second. Or you want to answer, please? Yeah. Okay, so you're using www, your domain. Yeah, I mean, that works. Yeah, and there is a shorter way, but that works. So that's one thing you can do. But even if you do that, that means that those images have to be on the server, right? So what I would recommend would be to essentially try to think in terms of, you're always going to check your local files. Does it work locally? And then put it through FileZilla on the server and then check it. So do those separately. I have some students, so Bill Newman, you will meet Bill if you haven't already. He has a different approach. His approach is to just, as soon as you make the change, immediately upload it with FileZilla and then test it live. I think it's better to test it locally, because then if there are some local problems, you can eliminate them at this point and then upload. But it's really up to you. But you need to remember that if you have something locally, nothing is going to happen until you place exactly the same files through FileZilla on the cloud. And it sounds like if you're not seeing images, one of the main, there's several things. So what could possibly go wrong with images? You might have misspelled the name or the extension, or you didn't put it, most likely you didn't put it in the right folder. So you need to make sure that your folder names are correct, right? And you have to double check that. After you put it on the FileZilla, you need to make sure that you have the directory structure there working correctly. Yeah, I mean, everything is case sensitive, and I've given you a tip about this too, which is to always use lowercase. What I would recommend is to always use lowercase for all your file names, directory names. Just use lowercase. That's going to save you a lot of headaches, essentially. In caps? Yeah. And it will complete it for you. Okay. Yeah. Right. Versus, yeah. So everything has to match, is pretty much, and it means a lot of attention to detail, right? Sometimes it helps to have a second pair of eyes. So the other advice I would give is, it sounds like some of you are doing it anyway. Maybe get together with someone else and look at their stuff, and they'll look at yours, and it's just looking with fresh eyes is always easier to spot problems than if you're looking at your own. All right. Anything else? Angie?
I don't know why I think I was like little when I was doing that rotate around. I had that same issue with out with them. Didn't measure it correctly. I think it was sideways.
Right.
I wasn't sure if that was a issue with code or if it's no issue.
It sounds like it's an issue with somewhere the transport between some of the files, some of the applications you used transposed it. So maybe you can delete it and try again. So you're on a Mac or you're on Windows now, James?
We fixed it.
But what were you on? I'm just trying to see if in your Windows as well, or a Mac. When did this happen? On a PC? Windows 7, Windows 10, 10. Yeah, this is one of those things that you just probably have to grab on your file, and it's not in our domain. It's not in our influence sphere, unless you did something like image editing, but it doesn't sound like you did that. All right, I have another tip for you, which is that at some point you're going to start having more sophisticated problems that you need to figure out. And so what you should do is you're going to Google essentially the error message, and you're going to Google, especially with, there is a Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is essentially where developers post questions. You don't have to post question, but chances are your question is already posted by someone else, and then it has been answered by various people. And the thing about Stack Overflow is that the answers are ranked. So this way, the top ranked answers are probably the correct ones. So make sure to be checking Stack Overflow as well. And one thing I like to do is more specifically Google exactly the error messages is given to you by the software you're using, right? So whatever the error message is, just copy that and then Google for the error message instead of trying to rephrase it, and that helps. Because these error messages, they're actually in the code, so it's going to pull up the most accurate result. It may not be the very first thing that pops up, but usually you have to try 2-3 things and then you find the solution. Anything else? I would say also to just look at the smallest possible, start with the smallest possible, isolate the problem is what I'm trying to say, right? So if you have a problem with the image, try to look first to make sure your image tag is correct and then expand from there. And I think about 50% of the errors are typos, so make sure to use the validator as a very quick way. It's going to tell you, well, if your ID is incorrect, the validator will not catch it. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So if you mistype the ID attribute, like some of you last time had it capital case versus lowercase, the validator is not going to catch that. So you still have to use your eyes in some cases, but in terms of the structure, at least, the validator is very helpful. All right, Darren, you must have something, Aaron. What else? Oh no, we should actually show that. Well, yeah, so
I think later in the second half.
definitely with CSS, right?
CSS.
But we have the developer console with, I think it's more appropriate to show it when we are working with CSS. So we'll show you how to use the developer console. Yeah, right. Sometimes they even show a video on that. So I'll post, if you're on Canvas, feel free to post it, or if not, I'll post it for you.
The other thing too is you're talking about, if you have too much stuff in one page, this will be debug. That's why you want to try to make it partition as much as possible with a file structure. If you have one monolithic web page, it's hard to debug.
Yeah.
But if you partition like one for testimonials, one file size.
Definitely, yeah. So break it down as much as you can. Great, so I'll post some additional tips from Aaron here. And if you come across anything else, feel free to add to this discussion so we have a collective reference of troubleshooting tips, all right? And maybe the last thing to say is that you just, with technology, okay, things just don't work. You know, I know it expedites, technology expedites matters in some ways, but they just don't work from the first time. So you just need to sort of have this attitude that you're going to have to troubleshoot and look into what's going on. It's pretty rare things just work from the first time, right? So knowing that will help you maybe not feel discouraged. Sure.
If you magically wait till last minute, nothing's going to work. Think ahead of time, things magically work. But another thing too is sometimes you can debug something that's too much, spend too much time. You also know I need to take a break and come back the next day and go, oh, that's what it was. That way you don't want to get to the point of diminishing returns.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's why we take a break every hour, because it's just actually more productive to take a break. So we try to do this as well. Okay, so let's return to the images chapter. Here. Wow, look at this. Do you see this odd behavior here? Do you see these characters? Something is not picking up, it's not mapping correctly. Is my language English? Yeah, I mean, it is because I was typing, so, but anyway, there is a mystery right there. We'll just leave it unresolved for now, but that's strange. Right, that's what it looks like. All right, so last time, what did we cover about images? Should we go at the end here? Do a bit of a review. It's something else that I don't know why Chrome is doing this to me, but all right, so we know at this point, if you have a image, you're going to use the image element. So just a bit of review, and then we're going to continue. Where am I looking at right now? Yeah. I'm looking at week 4 slides. Did you find it? Yeah. Okay. And then to actually point to where the image is, you're going to use the source attribute, right? And when we have attribute, the syntax is always, what is the syntax for an attribute? Always, no matter what the attribute is. If I can find it. Do you have one? Thank you. I used to have. I just need one for nothing. Okay, I'll give it back. Thanks. All right, what is the syntax, the general syntax for attribute? So it's going to be the attribute name, in case source. It is always going to be equals to, and then the value, okay? So the attribute in the value, and it's always like that. Some of you are using colons, so just remember that the syntax is, and these are case sensitive, so if your ID, that's what I was telling you earlier, I saw. Exactly, so that's the one specific example of attributes. But with ID, if you have, my ID like this with capital case, and then you're trying to reference it is with a lowercase my ID, it's not going to work. And that's something that the validator will not catch. So if your validator is giving you thumbs up, check your own attributes and make sure that those names match correctly as you're referencing them, okay? Does this make sense? All right. And so yes, we have the source attribute, and we also have the alt attribute, which describes the content of the image. And this is going to appear on the image in what case? If the image doesn't load, at least you're going to get some text telling what's supposed to be there. We also talked about save the images, prepare your images before you put them on your web page, and have them in the right format, in the right size. Don't try to resize them once they are already loaded on the browser. You could, but it will just slow down your page. And as you probably have heard this research, most users stay just for 3 seconds, and if things don't load, they will just essentially leave your website. So in terms of usability, you want your page to load as quickly as possible. And you can do some tricks. You can do things that make it look like it's loading and just play, show cat pictures or something like that. But you don't need to slow it down additionally by changing the size. Right. So we covered that. We covered the different types of images and different. So we have JPEGs, GIFs, and then we talked about vector images, which are the ones type of image that actually scales up and down as needed. So it's not going to rasterize if you increase the size. All right. But vector images are bigger in size, so you don't necessarily want to use them. It just depends. So we're going to do this. We're going to create this website in a moment to just make something a little more complete. But before that, I have to show you also there's some HTML5 tags that are specifically added for images. So let's start with those, and then I'll come back. We will come back and work with this example. All right, let's see here. You know what transparency means, right? So it's an image is either opaque or transparent. All right, so if you can see through, it's transparent. If it's opaque, you can't see through. And you can have transparency versus opaqueness is a value usually between 0 and 1 called alpha. So you can have a value being, for example, 0.5, where it's a little bit transparent, but you can still see it. So this might be something that you will encounter as well. All right, so now we're going to learn about a couple HTML5 tags that were added specifically to work with images. One of them is the figure. So the idea with the addition of the figure tag is that anytime you have a figure, such as an image or a chart, you're going to put it inside a figure tag. And this way, the screen readers know that this is some kind of figure. All right. And then if you have a figure, then an image is type of a figure. You can also add a new tag called fig caption. And then this will allow you to caption your image. All right. So let's do this example together with the sea otters that hold hands. And then we're going to do the other example with the cupcakes. So start your Visual Studio Code. And we're going to need some images, so make sure that you're working in the folder where your images are. Aaron, did you download the Visual Studio here somewhere?
Oh, I didn't do it on the desktop. I have it on
Oh wait, here it is. It's just very slow, but it's coming up twice. So remember, when we're working with Visual Studio, let's do a review. What is the first thing we're going to open? Is it a file? A folder. You always open a folder first and then a file. So we're going to open folder. And this will be probably your Web 110 folder. And in this folder, you should have the images subfolder where your images are from last time. And now that we're in this folder, then Visual Studio is going to show us all the files currently in folders in the space. And here is where we're going to now create a new file, and it's going to get saved to this folder. So create a new file and save as fig-caption.html. Oops. Yeah, I was just noticing that it has not saved the. I need to fix this. It didn't save the changes to the font from last time for whatever reason. So let's see here. I'm working exactly on that. So you can see that for some reason Visual Studio is not saving my changes. All right, here we go. Okay, and then can you see better now? Or bigger? Bigger? Okay. All right, so we start with a simple file. And again, open your, if you like, use your template. I type very fast, so I'm just doing this here. But if you have a template, just open the template to save a little bit of time. So this is fig caption, figure, and all right, I'm just, so yeah, just work on your basic page elements, and then we are going to continue in a second. Yeah. So create a file, fig caption. You can save it as fig-caption.html. All right. So the reason I'm saying these are HTML5 elements, by the way, we are using HTML5 because we declared here doc type HTML. This is the HTML5 version. But these other tags that you see on the page, they're older. They have been pre-existing in older versions of HTML as well as today in HTML5. But these particular, such as the figure, they were added in HTML5. Okay. So at this point, we're going to add a figure. Tag. And again, you use the figure tag or element designate that this is some kind of visual, maybe a chart or an image or a graph, something like that. And that's useful for the screen readers so they see that an image is coming. Okay. And then in here, we're going to have our image. So you know how to do this. Source equals. And also you can use the autocomplete help here from Visual Studio Code. Instead of typing it, that's actually preferred because it's less likely to, you're less likely to make a typo. So I'm going to double click here and it opens my images folder. And the example I wanted to include here, the file was the authors.jpg. And so if you select all these, the image has been added correctly because it found it. And so I didn't understand what you were saying with the changing of the case, where okay, and then right, fixed it. Yeah. So just save everything lowercase, and that's my answer. So if you remember to do that, it will help. Yeah. And this time you will not forget, right, Joe? Because once you experience the problem, then then you're going to remember exactly. So you had a good learning moment.
It was.
Right. All right.
It was more than a moment, though.
Right. Unfortunately, more than a moment. Like an hour. All right. And then our autograph of two authors. And I'm not, let's see here, I forgot to close the. Now remember again, the image source, the image tag is, and again, these are useful hints here as well from Visual Studio. The image is one of those tags that it's only one tag, it doesn't have a closing tag. So close, just one closure here. And then we're going to add a break. And then add a fig caption. And the fig caption is going to give you a caption to the image, which will show, so the title will show when you hover over, click on the image or hover over, whereas the fig caption will always be there. And so we can give it a caption here, see authors holding hands while they sleep. And that's it. This is a pretty short example, so you can save it and then test it. Here they are. I need to move this. Oh, because it's part of the figure. And then it's going to format it. Okay, so save. Okay, so put it inside, put the fig caption inside the figure tag, and then it will align it correctly for you. And there you have it. Yeah, so the fig caption is part of the figure. So put it inside, and this will align the images properly. Okay. Any questions? All right. So again, this image right now in this file is local. I don't think we need to upload it, but if you wanted to see it on the web, you would actually need to upload the image the folder, yeah, you need to essentially grab the file and then the folder where the image resides and the image, and then drag them onto the right panel in FileZilla, and this will put them on the server. Right. And you can always check where you are by looking up here on the URL. If the URL says something like that, or if it says C, C drive, then you're local. If it says HTTP or HTTPS, then you are on the web. All right, so let's do the other example. Let's see here. All right, so let's go ahead, and the next thing we're going to do is put together the following example. All right. So this example has several images. It is fairly common. This might look like text, but if we look at it, it's going to turn out that it's an image. So a logo is often created as an image and then uploaded, even though it looks like text. So someone has created this in Illustrator or Photoshop and then saved it. So this is an image up there. And then we have another image that is slightly moved, so it creates a little movement on the page. So looking at this here, looks like we're going to be using the figure and fig caption, right? So we can get this image, the one of the images to be a little indented. And then underneath, we're going to add several images, 3 more images together. And this will allow us also to talk about the fact that the image tag is what you call an inline element. So what that means is that when you put paragraphs of text and close the paragraph, the next paragraph is going to start to the next line. Those are called block level elements. But the image, unless you do something different, the next element is going to start right after and right after. So they don't go on the next line. And this is called an inline element. There are several of them, and the image is one of them. Span is another popular inline element, okay? So these elements, such as a paragraph, a heading, div, which we haven't covered yet, they are block level elements. This is going to put your text, and then the cursor will be on the next line. But with the images, they just go one after the other. If you don't want it to look like that, then you can put the image inside, for example, a paragraph, and then it's going to nest it so that the next image goes on the next line. So let's go ahead and put this together. And we know pretty much everything we need to know, but it's sort of nice to have a better looking product here, if you will. So we're going to have a new file. We are already in the Web 110 folder, so I'll close the fig caption example. And then we're going to start a new example, new file called example.html. And again, we will be using the images, so we are counting on the images to be available here in the images folder. And maybe let's take a look at the images we'll be using. So here is the logo. So the logo is a GIF, as I talked last time. It's common for logos to be in the GIF format because there are solid colors. Here it is. And then we have the image for the chocolates. And we have a couple other images as well. So I need to make a change here to my Chocolate Islands 1. If you downloaded multiple versions, maybe this happened to you as well. So, and then here, those little images, several of them that we're going to align one next to each other. All right. Okay, so We use some code here. This will be the images example. And then the first image we add is going to be the logo. So it's common for the logo to be on top. We want the logo to be in its own line instead of stacked with other images. So I'm going to put it inside an H1. Okay, so you can go to modules chapter 4, week 4, and take a look up here. Links to images to download. Maybe you can work with us and then download the images. It's up to you, I don't know. I'll try to slow down a bit. But again, let's put the image inside the H1 because we want it to take up its own space. And then in here, we're going to have image source equals. Emmet is the name of the script that does this autocomplete. So in case you're wondering what Emmet is. And then we're going to go into the images. And then the first image is logo.gif. Right. You have to open the image tag here. And then Alt, logo, A to zucchini. My tags are off. Here we go. So you might I like to actually look at pretty much everything I add so that if something is wrong, I catch it to this point. So I'm already starting to check my site. And here it is. The logo is displaying. So far, so good. And then you can just refresh and view additional changes. Next, we're going to add the figure and the fig caption for the bigger image. So this would be in the next line. So we have figure. And then image source is equal to images, chocolate islands. And title, chocolate islands. I was just trying to, it's not showing up. I was trying to make it to wrap the word wrap. Here we go. Word wrap. I don't think it will save, but I'll try. Okay, so it worked. I just was changing because my text is 30 fonts, so it's really big. So I'll just added word wrap here. All right, so here we go. All right, and now we can use the fig caption, or if we want to put it with a little more space, we can put it inside a paragraph as a way of giving a little more space. So we can put paragraph, and then in the paragraph, fig caption. This recipe for individual cakes is delicious. Okay. I didn't want this to be so big, so
Are they not aligned because of the H1? Of the H1?
yeah, so the figure and the fig caption are meant to be indented, but that's not meant to be so big. So let's see why that is. So we closed H1, right? Let's see if my tags H1. Oh yeah, this, oh, that's why. Okay, so they didn't quite close the H1 correctly. There we go. It's that. And again, you can use the validator, but you got it there. Okay, so that's what we wanted. And if you wanted to give it a little more space, you can put it inside. You can put the fig caption inside the paragraph. So do this just so you can see the difference. Okay. And you can see it gives it a little more space. It's always nice to have white space. It just makes it look more pleasant to the eyes, if you will. So we can put a paragraph and then give it a little more space. So at this point, we have our logo and our image here, and it's meant to be indented. This is from the fig caption. And then lastly, we're going to add the small images one next to each other. Okay, so let's add a H4 that says more recipes. 1 second. 1 second, go ahead. Up here or here? This one, so the title would be if you click on the image or hover over the image, it's going to show you the title. Whereas the caption will always be there underneath. Did you have a question back there? Okay, all right.
So the figure tag just doesn't exist anymore. You can control that without the figure tag.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want the figure caption, yeah.
Right. And you can use the figure caption just by adding a paragraph, really, but it's just already built in, it's convenient. But the main reason why is because these tags allow screen readers to parse more easily what's going on. You have to understand also that text on images is not readable by screen readers. So if you want the text to be read, you actually need to have text, right? So just because we have a logo here, the words on the logo image is not going to be parsable by screen readers. So we want to have as much text as we can as a way of essentially, getting search engine rankings and just being found. And in addition, as we mentioned, with people with visual impairment, the more text there is that the screen reader can read, the more accessible the experience would be. Yeah. All right. So I think I'm going to let Aaron work with Romeo back there. And then the last images, we're going to put all of them in a paragraph. Okay. So the first image will be the lemon cake. And we have the alt and the title. And then we're going to have a couple other images. And again, the point of this exercise is to show that the image tag will stack them next to each other, will flow them next to each other, as opposed to putting them one under each other, all right? And so then the second image is going to be the Brussels sprouts. And the last one will be the zucchini cake. There we go. Oops. All right. So let's save and preview. And there you have it. Yeah. So that's a relatively nice looking website, and it illustrates several different uses of images. If you complete this and then it's working as expected, you can try experimenting by take out the paragraph and see what happens. Put each of the images in a paragraph and then just see the different behavior. All right. And also note, I'm going to make actually a comment here that images are inline elements, whereas the paragraph and the H elements, they're called block level elements. So when you finish here, let's take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to do one more example to talk about, again, the positioning of the images relative to the block level elements and how it affects where the images get displayed. So we'll have another example after the break. Raise your hand if you need help with anything right now. example with images, and then we can wrap up images after that, okay? So, let's see. Well, does anyone have any, I answered a few questions, but any other questions on the example, Aaron, or comments?
Sorry, Rob, when you showed the example webpage, I know you did this before, but in this code, it was already there. You do control U to get the code.
I don't want you to get the code because you're going to get to another class and then faculty will be like, you don't know how to hand code HTML from scratch. So
What I meant to say is, when you jump to the class later on today, sorry, that's how you get the code, because she is fast typing, so I mean, you have
Sure.
to get better at typing.
well, I mean, actually, I feel like I'm not very fast and I take breaks, but you can certainly get the code. I mean,
Some students were asking about it.
if you want to get the code, it's already available to you. So maybe I can show again how you can get it, okay? All right. So the code is always available to you. You will do yourself a disservice if you just copy and paste because you basically learn nothing. So don't do that. But if you want to compare, then you can just go to the chapter 5 or chapter X code links. All right. And then let's say you want this example we just worked on. And then you can do a view page source. So right click. And so if you copy this and paste it in Visual Studio, and if you have your images in the right folder, it will work. Is this what you had in mind, Aaron? Yeah. So you always have access to the source code via this. But I'm telling you that you need to, at some point, you will not be hand coding all this stuff. But at this point, in this class, the goal is to learn how to hand code HTML and CSS. And that's what we're doing. All right. So let's see one more example. Question, sure.
We decided to things
Mm-hmm.
in mind.
Right here?
The image down here.
Yeah, that's not, it's different. You just have to put it in an anchor tag and it will still be the same. Yeah. All right, so one more example with images. And this will be where to place images in your other elements. So I'm going to see here. So we need essentially a new file. So new file. And maybe even close your existing files. It seems like there is just too much going on in your environment. So try to simplify it by, now that we have finished, just close the files that you're not working on. I'll copy this here though so I can reuse the tags. And then close this. And then create a new file. And then let's save as images-placement.html. So these are the other files in the folder, but I've closed them and I just have one file open to just simplify matters as much as possible. And now we're going to work with the bird image. And so let me introduce you to, as part of this example, a new tag called a div tag. And we're going to style it to be 450 pixels in width. So div width, sorry, I need to use 450 pixels. And you don't have to say pixels, this is the measure here. So the div tag is a block level tag, a block level element, which means that it's going to take up the entire line. If we say width 450, it's going to just make it so that it doesn't extend to the entire visual space on the viewport, or the body, I should say, but it's only going to be 450 pixels, whereas your screen is probably 960 or wider. So this is the purpose of doing this style equals width 450. And then let's start by adding an image. And again, the examples are always available to you. And we're going to work with a bird image, bird.gif. Okay. All right, so let's open up your folder, your page, so you can start refreshing and seeing changes. So to do this, we're going to go to your folder and find the file, such as images placement. And once you start it up, you can see here the bird displaying. So you can, these tools I said I was going to show you later, but you can already start using them, and it's going to show you the different elements. And here it's showing us, don't worry too much about it, but if you wanted to maybe look, if you wanted to use these tools here, essentially when you hover over, it's going to give you some information about the particular element you're selecting. So here it tells us this is an image with the dimensions of 100 by 100. So that's information that will become at some point useful. And this is the div here. All right. And so let's add a paragraph and see how the paragraph interacts with the image. And I'm just going to add a paragraph of lorem ipsum or kitten ipsum. Here we go. All right, so save your changes and let's take a look. Oops. So you can see the behavior here. If you have an image and then a paragraph, the image is going to be above the paragraph, and then the paragraph text will follow it because the paragraph is a block level element. But there are some other possibilities. The other possibility would be, so you will remain inside the div tag. So I'm going to add a couple breaks here. And then what would happen if we open the paragraph and then we put the image inside the paragraph as opposed to above it? So you can just copy and paste line 8. It's just the image tag. And then this time place it inside the paragraph. And then follow it with some text. So do you see the difference between the two positionings? And then as a final example, I'll add a couple breaks here. I'm going to add a paragraph. And add some text. And then what would happen if we put the image in the middle of the text? Okay, so you can see what it does. It's essentially putting it in the middle of the text. So these are three possible ways in which the text interacts with the image, or the paragraph tag interacts with the image.
That last one, there command for texting back around
Within the HTML or within the editor?
the bird and then
Yeah, so what you could do is you could use the padding or margin, and essentially those are the boxes, the invisible boxes that you can widen as needed, and we're going to cover it. It has to do with CSS. All right. Any questions? Okay. So let's go to W3 schools. Oh, just sorry. Yeah, so yeah, let's go to W3 schools and then search for W3 schools inline versus block. And let's take a look. This is the link you want is HTML block and inline elements. All right, so again, the concept here is that every HTML element has a default inline or block display. And for most elements, well, I guess it just depends, but some of them are blocks, some of them are inline. And here we have some examples of block level elements, such as the div. And the block level element is going to start on a new line, and this is how you know it's block. So essentially it's going to stretch until it goes to the next line, which is here. So you can see, and hopefully you're doing this yourself as well, but you can see that this is only one word, you know, hello or world. And even so, because it's put in a div, it's taking up the entire line. And that's the idea of the block level elements. All right? So try it yourself. Did everyone find the link okay? Here is an overview of the block level elements in HTML. So let me magnify a bit here. All right. Let's see. So we are familiar with, so now you know the list ordered and unordered list is here. Figure, fig caption, div. There's some that we haven't covered yet. And we have been using a lot of H1 through H6. Those are also block level elements. And so is the P and the UL, right? And the list item. So these are all block level elements. And here's some examples of an inline. So span is probably one of the most commonly used inline elements. And we haven't used it yet, but we will. So you can see here, if we put hello world in a span as opposed to a div, you can see the difference in behavior, right? So it's essentially put it next to each other as opposed to on a new line. And that is the behavior of an inline element, such as the image or the span. And then the paragraph, it's a block level, so it's going to be in its own line. All right. Any questions? Here is a list of the inline elements. So let's see which ones are we familiar with. So anchor. Image is here. These, you have seen the M and the bold, how they only take up the space around the word. And then, are we familiar with any other ones so far? Strong, yep, strong. Which one? BR. BR, there you go. And then the div element. Since we were talking about div, let's show you again. So the div is often used as a container for other elements because you can essentially, group elements together like in a box, put them in a box together in a div. And so this is, for example, you can put a couple paragraphs. And the reason this is handy is because you can then style at the div level, and then the styles will apply to the elements inside when we start working with style. So let's take a look at this example here. So now the div has a style, so that's a CSS. Although we usually want to put them in a separate file, but there's just a shortcut again until we learn how to create separate CSS styles. So this one has, the div has a background color black. The color of the font is white, and it has some padding. So let's see what this looks like. So take a look here. And you can see that based on the style of the div, which is again the container, all the elements inside are also taking on the attributes of the div. And that's very convenient and very commonly used, right? So you're also learning here a couple of CSS properties, background colors you can see. So if you like to just play for a moment with a color, you can change it to a different color. See how it applies. Let's make it purple. And then color refers to the color of the text, as you can see, because this is white here. And so we can change it and make it, I don't know, green. And then the padding refers to the space between the div and the text inside the box. So right now it's 20 pixels. And let's see if we make it 50 pixels, how we changed the appearance. And again, what we did to the div applied to the elements inside the div. So the number changed the space between the edge of the div box and the text. It became bigger because we made it from 20 to 50 pixels. And these measures are all in pixels. So the pixel is going to be, each dot on the screen is a pixel, just like we discussed with images and as we happened to talk about in Python class yesterday, right? And the div obviously, is the div a block or an inline? Clearly a block, okay. Let's see if there is anything else here. So the span element, maybe just talk about the span briefly. It's used for sometimes I'll tell you the most common use for span element is that when you're working with forms, and then if the user enters something incorrect, then you're going to display something in red in the as a span and say invalid input, enter again. So usually you know how these texts get displayed next to the form, and that's what the span is used for. And here is showing you another example. We have an H1, my, and then the only word that is part of the span is the word important, and that's why the CSS for color is only applied to important, and this happens in line inside the other, inside the H1. And if you add additional, so essentially this is the text between the tags of the span, and we can add text here, and it's going to apply, but it's all in line. Right? And you know, you can also, you can apply any kind of CSS here as well, but this is an inline element span. So see here. This should have been moved to this. How can I do this? So I gave you a link to placeholder images, and again, you can use those instead of real images if you like. Just get the dimensions here, and it's going to give you an image that you can save. So that's something you can do if you like. And the way it works, you should be able to specify in the URL. Let's see here. You should be able to edit here the URL, the image size. I don't know why it's not doing it right now. Do you see? Not sure why this is not working. Maybe here it will work. Let's see. So 450. Do I need to log in somewhere? Huh.
You can't just copy and paste.
You can, and that's fine. But if you wanted to get a different dimension, you should be able to type the different dimension, and it's not doing it on my machine anyway. Not sure what's the problem. Generally, this should work. So. All right, so do you have any questions on images? I think that's pretty much the material for chapter 5. Anything, did everyone get their images to show up eventually? All right. If you would like, you can practice uploading one of the examples. Actually, the example would be a good one because it has so many images. Practice uploading it to your website and make sure that you have everything working. So I think we're going to have Open Lab. Maybe just look ahead and see what we have going next week to give you a heads up. And I guess you don't have any other homework, so you just have an easy week. And then in week 5, what is in week 5? Week 5, let's see. Here. Tables, okay. So next week we're going to learn how to put data in tables, such as various data organized in tables. And if we wrap up chapter 6 early, the next chapter is forms. So that's a chapter that has a lot of information. So just be ready. Essentially, there are many different form styles you can create to interact with the user, and we're going to learn about those. All right, so for the remainder of the class, if you'd like Open Lab, and I recommend trying to upload the example to your website because it has a lot of images, so make sure that it works, all right, through FileZilla. And eventually, when the class nears, week 11 or so, you probably want to take these down since they're not really our examples, but after you verify its employment, or replace with your own images. Okay. So raise your hand if you have any questions, but work on uploading to through FileZilla to your server.